And we're going to kick things off. So thank you everyone for being here today. Welcome to Sustain SU and the Sustainability Council's mayoral candidate Climate 8. My name is Allison McIntosh and I'm the coordinator for the Sustainability Lecture Series. And today I'll be moderating the debate. I'd also like to thank Latifat Bersari, who helped organize this event with Sustain SU. So I'd like to start off today touching on truth and reconciliation, an issue which has personal and professional dimensions. Yesterday was the first National Day for Reconciliation, an invitation to reflect on and challenge ongoing structures of oppression, genocide, and dispossession. Universities and governments are two institutions who perpetuate these atrocities through extractive and exploitative research practices, racist policies, and policing. I hope that all the settlers who are gathered today are learning and reflecting on ways that they contribute to building better relationships and dismantling structures of oppression yesterday, today, and every day. I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're situated on today. The University of Alberta respectfully acknowledges that we're located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous people, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. So a little bit about the speaker series. This talk is part of the Sustainability Council Lecture Series. During the academic year, the Council hosts interdisciplinary scholars, professionals, and activists who engage with sustainability, climate change, and the environment. The lectures are usually bi-weekly throughout the academic year, so stay tuned and keep an eye on our newsletter and our social media to find out about upcoming events. Just a note for the benefit of those who are not with us today, we're recording this lecture and we'll publish it to our YouTube channel as soon as we can. The audience will not appear in any of the published video, so you don't have to worry about that. Only the speakers today. It's my great pleasure to introduce our forum today. The Sustainability Council and Sustain SU got together to host this because climate and the environment are among the most important issues for young voters. Today's climate debate will begin with introductions and two questions that all candidates will answer. Audience members are encouraged to put their questions for the candidates into the chat. We'll be collecting your questions for the Q&A portion following the two preset questions. We ask all candidates to keep their responses brief so that we can get to as many audience questions as possible. Candidates will answer the first question in the following order: Amarjeet Sohi, Kim Krushell, Michael Oshry, Cheryll Watson, Breezy Brian Gregg, and Diana Steele. For the second question, we'll go in the reverse order. For questions from the audience, we will try to spread the questions around evenly, and up to one candidate can reply to another candidate's response. Candidates, please raise your hand in Zoom or on the screen if you wish to provide a response to another candidate's question. With that, a reminder for the audience to put your questions for the candidates in the chat for us to collect, and we're on to the first question. I'm so excited about this. So please introduce yourself. And what do you think is the biggest climate or environmental challenge facing Edmonton right now? I'll give it to Amarjeet.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And also thank you so much for the land acknowledgement. My name is Amarjeet Sohi. I am a former city councillor, served on city council for 8 years and a member of parliament, and served in two major economic portfolios, infrastructure and natural resources. I believe that we are facing a climate crisis and leadership is necessary. And that's why I provided that leadership during my time in federal government by creating the Canada Infrastructure Bank, partnership between private sector and the public sector, to leverage investments into green economy and green jobs, as well as setting up standalone a green infrastructure fund, $20 billion that is helping cities become more greener and sustainable, as well as the disaster mitigation and adaptation fund. As a matter of fact, the city of Edmonton got close to $50 million to stop flooding and deal with the impact of flash flooding and climate change that is ravaging our communities, right? So, and that's one of the reasons that I'm stepping up, because I take this challenge very seriously. And I believe that cities can and must play a big role. So I'm going to highlight the steps that I feel that question you posed, the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge for us is positioning ourselves as a leader in energy transition and turning climate change crisis into opportunities for green jobs and green economy. And as we move toward decarbonizing our economy, Edmonton can be a major hub for renewable energy production and energy adaptation. But we cannot let it slip by. So let me talk about the things that I will do. I will establish an external agency to leverage private and public sector investments to retrofit 30,000 homes and buildings to reduce emissions, lower utility costs, and create thousands of jobs. Establish clean energy improvement program, complete our LRT network and make public transit accessible and affordable, accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles, create partnerships to build infrastructure such as charging stations, and propose zoning options for new buildings to be electric vehicle ready. Create a strategy for city fleet requiring that all new vehicles be zero emission by 2025. Create a zero emission center of excellence to support industry capacity building and job creation. Promote Edmonton as a hydrogen hub, channeling expertise and investments into good jobs in a key clean tech area. Work with private sector to position Edmonton as a construction hub for clean energy infrastructure. Work with city council, city administration, and utility companies to make infrastructure resilient to climate change and create 15-minute communities with local amenities to encourage local living and
Thank you.
consumption. So thank you so much and look forward to our conversation.
Thanks so much, Amarjeet. I'll pass it on to Kim.
Gotta unmute. First of all, thank you for putting this on. You know, I believe our city is at a pivotal point in time, and our next mayor will need to be able to hit the ground running, have a real understanding of how our city works, and also what it's like to run a business. And I have that experience. And I'm returning to politics, quite frankly, because I care about Edmonton and our collective future. And I know from my 21-year-old son that there's a lot of fear out there right now about where the future holds, and particularly when it comes to climate change. There are commitments in each of my core platform pillars that address climate change and GHG emissions, but I'll be releasing my full climate change commitment next week, so stay tuned. But let's be real, no platform is going to be able to anticipate everything that our city and council will face over the next 4 years. So I think what you need to know from each mayoral candidate is what we're like. And so what I'm like as a leader is I bring a balanced and bold approach, and I have a track record of getting things done and using science and data-driven decision-making to make that happen. Now, without a doubt, Edmonton's biggest challenge in climate change is our geography. As the northernmost capital city in North America and a winter city, there are realities that we have, in particular, the need to heat our homes for many months of the year. In 2019, Edmonton, as biggest single source for GHG emissions by a long shot, it was 63%, was building heat and electricity. So some of the most important and impactful things that we can do to make the difference on climate change and emissions are simple. They're not flashy or exciting. We're talking about properly insulating our homes, and we're talking about upgrading windows. So my plan will be addressing those needs. And we're also talking about a capital asset management plan that monitors our aging infrastructure and prioritizes investing in the right upgrades at the right time and helping our clean technology industry and continue towards reducing our carbon footprint. One big disappointment that I'm hoping we can turn around is the Blatchford development. When I was on city council, I actually put my election on the line to close our old municipal airport in 2010. And what we wanted to do was build a green, clean technology residential development that would put Edmonton on the map for how we will live sustainably in the future. But today, The vision hasn't actually worked out. And so I think our next mayor will need to work to keep that vision, but take a private sector approach to make that development actually happen. And I'd say our second biggest challenge has to do with the fact that we built our city based on a driving city. So we need multimodal transportation network, and we need to focus on how we can design and get better infill and move our city towards the future when it comes to transportation. The good news is that the city of Edmonton is leading the way in climate change action. And I would like to take the time to actually acknowledge Mayor Iveson's work on this file. He built a robust plan, and there's actually a dashboard that measures results that you can see every day. So I don't think we need to completely reinvent the wheel. We need to take action on our existing plan.
Thanks so much, Kim. Thanks so much. I will pass it to Michael.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. For those of you that don't know me, I was on city council for 4 years, and otherwise my background's in business, and I started a few companies in town, including the Remedy Cafes that I think some of you would know about, and a large company that's got a couple hundred people in downtown and 4 other cities around the world, 4 other countries around the world, sorry. And then I actually started an infill financing company, because when I left city council, I found that one of the challenges to infill was the lack of capital. So some of the things that we need to do as a city to move us forward on many things comes down to some boring things that maybe aren't so flashy, and access to capital and how we're going to pay for things is actually comes up quite a lot. The next, the energy transition strategy and the energy resilient plan for the city is imperative for me. And the thing that I think about is how we're going to do these things. I'm not big on platitudes. I don't kind of talk about, yes, we have this problem, we should talk about it, we should all meet and figure it out. I really come down to how we're going to actually achieve some of these challenges. And 2/3 of the $40 billion that's going to have to be spent on climate adaptation is going to have to be borne by the private sector. And so we've got to make sure that we have partnerships with the private sector, and the city role is to be a catalyst for private sector in investment. And we're not going to succeed as a city if we try to do this alone. And so what my plans are, which I think addresses the question of what the biggest challenge is, there's more than one in my opinion. And so number one is we've got to make the city of Edmonton a clean energy technology powerhouse. We've got to partner with the private sector, with post-secondary institutions like the U of A, of course, corporate leaders, energy companies, investment firms, and government to figure out the best way forward for this, because again, government can't change this issue alone. And then secondly is to build a low carbon city and transportation network. And so our city plan for the next 1 million people is pretty extensive, but it does try to get the city into the existing borders. And so we have to make infill building a lot easier, which is, as I mentioned, how I think about that. And then we do have to accelerate the Blatchford development. It's $200 million that we've invested in that piece of land. We keep the same environmental vision, but we've got to get it out of city council and government's hands. There's been 20 townhouses built in 10 years. And if we want to achieve the city's environmental goals and infill goals, we just have to do Blatchford and nothing else. And then I've committed to have every bus that comes offline replaced with electrical. So we can do that one at a time. It's going to take years, obviously, but we have to do that. And then there's a really interesting program around solar where we can basically pay for people's solar on their house upfront. And then on their property tax, with the savings they get from solar, they pay for it over time. So it's pretty much net free for the homeowner. And there's a lot of work that we have to do there, and everyone's going to play their part. And I'm pretty confident we can achieve the goals that we've set as a city. So lots of work to do. Look forward to carrying that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'll pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you. What an incredibly exciting opportunity to talk to so many people. There's nearly 200 people on this conversation. That's amazing. My name is Cheryll Watson, and here's a little bit about me. Born and raised in Edmonton, I grew up on the north side in the community of Beverly, and I've lived here my entire life. I've had various and incredibly important experiences throughout this city, both growing up and then later on as a mother raising a family and a business leader. I spent the majority of my career working in technology and innovation and 15 years where I worked for one of the world's global leaders in financial technology, Intuit. And so I led teams in 6 countries and 14 time zones. But in 2015 was presented with a really tough question: continue to work for this amazing organization or stay in Edmonton? And I chose Edmonton because I do love this city. But I felt through that experience of working for Intuit that Edmonton was being left behind. Other cities were outpacing us, moving more quickly, and I wanted to do something about it. So I spent 4 years working directly with city council, administration, the community to found this incredible organization called Innovate Edmonton. And many of you might know some of the work of Innovate Edmonton through Startup Edmonton, which spends a lot of time working in the community, really helping to inspire people to bring new inventions to the forefront, create great companies. And so that work was really focused on our future economy. But now I believe there's such a bigger opportunity for our city. It's such an important moment in time, and I want to be a part of that. And so I announced my intent to run for mayor based on 3 key platforms. Place: how do we create an incredibly well-built and well-maintained, safe and welcoming city? The second is around effective partnerships. How do we work together to solve our biggest challenges? And then number 3, potential. What is the future economy? And how can the nearly 100,000 post-secondary students really play a role in moving that forward? So this question that you ask is such an important one. And fortunately, it's been asked before by a number of incredibly smart people who helped to put together our city's energy transition plan. So I'm a big supporter of that plan, but here's a couple things that I believe could be different. The first is, I don't think we're moving quickly enough, and we're not relying on our unique strengths. And so my environmental adaptation plan that I've released policy on talks about how do we build on these strengths? How do we invest in accelerators that really can bring forward some of the new discoveries that we're making in responsible energy and transformation? And then the second thing is around this opportunity of how do we activate all nearly 1 million people in this city and allow us to play a more active and contributing role. And so thank you.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. I'll pass it to Breezy.
Thanks very much, Allison, and thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. Anyway, my name is Breezy, and I'm not going to say too much about myself because I want to get right down to what Cheryl was saying about we're not acting quickly enough. We're in a climate emergency. It's not apparent to a lot of people. And we're sort of being overshadowed right now by this terrible plague that we're experiencing. But an emergency, we have to realize that an emergency demands an emergency response. And the city's response right now is just not quick enough. Like, an emergency response has to be very, very quick, and it has to be very thoughtful. You have to be calm, but you have to be quick and thoughtful. And because things are moving so fast, there's so much damage being done to the planet right now. There's no time for just an ordinary person like us to understand and do the deep thinking necessary to understand what we actually should be doing. So we've got to rely on experts who have taken the time to do that deep thinking. And that's what I try to do. I try to make sure that I'm aligning my thinking and the policies of the city with what the experts say. And here's something to think about. The whole solution to the climate crisis boils down to 2 words, just 2 words: burn less. Okay, it's very, very simple. Okay, and there's all kinds of different ways that we can achieve that goal. And there were some of those ways that were talked about by the other candidates. The hydrogen thing, we got to make sure that we're doing the green hydrogen, not the blue hydrogen. Okay. If you don't know about that, check it out, please. Like, we can't fall for the, isn't that right, Allison? Anyway, but the thing that's not being talked about enough is that we travel too much. And when we travel, we burn too much. Like traveling, mostly if it's by vehicles, even if they're electric vehicles, a lot of our electricity is generated by burning. So we've just got to focus on the basics. We've got to concentrate on having a city. Like the city has some very good plans. Don Iveson has some good plans, but we've got to speed it up a lot, like really a lot. And we've got to be thoughtful about what we're doing. And the thing about traveling less, there's this good idea of having a 15-minute neighborhood. That's going to mean we don't have to drive everywhere. But there's also the idea that we should be able to link people with work that's close to their home. That's happening a bit now with at-home work, with online work and everything due to the pandemic. But I really think we have to focus on how we can build our city and transition our city into a city where we don't have to travel so much. It's fun, it's great, roar my car, I love it, but I think I've said enough here, but I think that really that's what we have to do. We have to really, really speed up the city's response to this emergency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Breezy. And finally, but certainly not least, I will pass it to Diana.
Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Diana Steele, and I'm running for mayor of our city to offer Edmontonians a different kind of leader. I have a well-rounded platform, an excellent work experience, and a master's degree in leadership. I have been the president of Crestwood Community League for the past 7 years, where I have been on the ground every day, and this is where I discovered my love for community volunteerism and servant leadership. Servant leaders believe in being true elected representatives of the people. It is not about electing me as the mayor. It is about giving a voice to all Edmontonians through me. Servant leaders are the types of leaders we should be looking for in all politicians. The servant leader understands the importance of keeping people here in our city to dream bigger dreams. We need a compassionate, consistent, measured, and transparent leader who can rally a 1 million person team to make our city the best in the world. And I know I am that leader. My top priorities are focused around creating a strong, thriving city, which encompasses an unprecedented, intertwined relationship between the private sector and public sector, ending homelessness, building mental health supports, supporting families in whatever form you define as a family, and advocating for at-risk or forgotten communities by developing a strong social infrastructure. When choosing your next mayor, I encourage you to research all candidates, not just those with name recognition. I could not have possibly foreseen what I was stepping into when I made the decision to run for mayor, nor did I anticipate the spectacular caliber of candidates you have to choose from. However, I am confident that the leadership I am offering to our city is unlike anything we have ever seen before, and I hope you see that too. Now, in regards to question number 1, what is the biggest climate issue that we are facing in Edmonton? I see 3 intertwined issues. I see a lack of financial ability for citizens to change their own personal lives. I see a lack of knowledge in how to change, and I see a disbelief in climate change. The younger generations see what's coming. I have 2 boys, they're 11 and 14. They are very aware of climate change, but the older generation is stuck in their ways, and they don't believe it is a thing. So for me, I see that as our biggest challenge right now, and that is what we will have to tackle as a council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll move on to question 2, which is, what is the role of City Council in building popular support and incentivizing the climate action needed for Edmonton to do its part in meeting climate targets? We're snaking back the way that we came, so it's back to you, Diana.
So City Council plays a big role in making sure Edmonton and its citizens do its part in meeting climate targets. We have to diversify our economy to prepare for a low carbon future, which will include embracing technology and innovation and other forms of energy. We also need to offer incentives to citizens so that they can do their part in changing their lives. I myself do what I can in my personal life to reduce my carbon footprint. I've ordered a Tesla. I run my campaign in an eco-friendly way. There are no signs. We have we're doing everything electronically and through social media, advertising only. And I think it's important for leaders to lead the way. We also need to continue, as I said in my last statement, to remind people that climate change is real and not just something that can be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Breezy.
Thanks, Allison. Well, let me think. What's the question again?
The question is, what is the role of City Council in building popular support and incentivizing climate action needed for Edmonton to do its part in meeting climate targets? It's a bit of a long one,
our role is
sorry.
to be a cheerleader. We got to cheer for more people burning less by having free fun. Like the city has to build lots of public luxuries so people can go and have fun without burning. Like a lot of the fun that we have, we just buy something or buy some fun, and that fun usually has to do with more burning. So the more the city can provide good social services and good public luxuries like parks and free recreation, the more we're going to be able to encourage people to be burning less. So I think it's a cheerleading role. We've got to talk about insulating your house, not driving too much, things like that. So it's a cheerleading role. Yay, climate. All right, stop that bad burning now. Put that fire out. Bring the fire trucks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm all here for cheerleading climate. I'll pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you. Our city council does play an incredibly important role. First of all, we have put a lot of work into creating the energy transition plan. And so the role of council is to ensure through their governance that we actually execute on that plan. But I do as well think that there is some responsibility and recognition that's required to make sure that we actually are enabling all Edmontonians to play a role. And the reality is that there's a large population of our city, probably around 35%, that have income levels below $30,000 a year. And it's incredibly challenging for them to play active roles in making different energy choices. And so I'm a big believer in how can we really invest in and bolster our energy infrastructure so that Edmontonians can have more of an ability to play a role without experiencing energy poverty.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Michael.
Well, thank you. Just so everyone knows, I put in my energy plan onto the chat. So I'll put it on right after I'm finished talking. But anyway, it comes down to leadership, and the role of government is to lead and to make decisions, but also to set an example. And we have to do it though very practically and realistically. And again, I keep saying this without platitudes. So for example, we can talk about converting cars and buses into electricity. In Alberta, 92% of our electricity is generated by coal and natural gas. So if we have a full electric fleet, we only have 8% renewables. And so that's not going to actually achieve very much as far as energy transition. So while it's the right thing to do over time, we do have to address the bigger problem. And so the way that I look at these things is we've got to pick some winners, and we've got to actually make a difference, and not we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver that other levels of government have in the past. And so we've really got to do what's in the purview of municipal government and very specific municipal government things. So the plan that I was talking about with the solar roofs, where we can provide solar panels on people's roofs or businesses for free, basically on the city's debt books. And then it goes on their property tax bill. So then what happens is over time, you pay off the solar panels with the savings from the energy savings. So it's basically free of sorts for the average person. It doesn't really cost the city much because it's on the debt books and we borrow money at very low rates. And so those are the ways that I would do it very practically. Another example that happened a couple of years ago is with electric bikes. And so those are the kind of things that we shouldn't do. Trying to subsidize the $3,000 bicycle by $300 is not gonna practically make a difference. And so for me, we've got to pick the things that really matter and not try to do everything for everybody. Unfortunately, we have limited resources as a city. Thank you. And I'll post my link right now.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Kim, please.
Thank you. I think everyone said it starts with leadership at the top, both personally and as the mayor. Personally, I will tell you that I've learned a lot more about how we can do our part. So I am down to one vehicle. And while it's not electric, because it was very hard to get a vehicle recently, it does actually stop idling when at stoplights. So I think everyone can do their part. I also happen to live in an infill neighborhood, very close to the downtown, because I love being close to where everything is. Certainly, it's important for council to be clear with voters on climate change. We need to make people understand that it is real and that it's critical that we take action, and we need to be transparent and open about what that action is. It was certainly something that I was known for when I was on city council back in the past. You might not always agree with me, but you would know where I stood, and I certainly would show evidence and information as to why I would make a decision the way I would make it. In terms of ensuring that we get things right when it comes to green building, we already have a very good action plan strategy that we need to follow, and we have a dashboard that we need to continue to make a difference. And we have actually brought down GHG emissions. So that's a positive. But I do think that there's more that we need to do. And from a leadership perspective, regionally, we need to work with our regional partners. We are talking about the hydrogen hub. The science needs to be there. But I think one of the other things we need to look at is nuclear. Many people aren't talking about that, but that is a way for us to transition differently, that is cheaper and that actually is greener when it comes to energy transition. It is challenging for us because we are a winter city. Batteries that are in Tesla, when we talk about electric vehicles, it's not so easy, because not only do we need an upgraded grid system, we also need to be able to get the rare earth metals that power Teslas. And so there are a lot of challenges. It's not some simple and easy thing. And I think we need to be asking, from a leadership perspective, all of those organizations and groups, including what I talk about as a learner city, what are we missing and what are the opportunities out there? Coming from the innovation and tech space, there's a lot going on that we should take advantage of. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kim. Appreciate it. I'll pass it for our last response to Amarjeet.
No, if this COVID has shown anything, is that leadership matters, that we need to have consistent, strong, and determined leadership to tackle crisis. And climate change is a crisis. City Council can demonstrate that leadership by working together. And that's where my leadership comes in, because I deeply believe in collaboration. I deeply believe in bringing people together to tackle big issues and reduce polarization, because this issue is very, very polarized. We also need to show compassion and empathy toward those who will be impacted by changes and actions on climate change, because a lot of Edmontonians work in the energy sector, and we need to make sure that they have the jobs, that they have well-paying middle-class jobs as we transition to a new economy. So coupling climate change with economic growth and green economy is absolutely essential for people to support action. Also, no one, as I said, no one should be left behind in this. Just transition matters. And I did that work during my time as a federal minister, making sure that as we were transitioning from coal communities to renewable, that communities were supported. And we need to have a leader who can work with other orders of government, with province and the federal government, who has an experience working with every province and tackling these big issues. So leadership matters, bringing communities together matters, and council also showing leadership by implementing the plan and really being serious that we take it seriously. And I think that leading by example is absolutely clear in my mind.
Thank you so much. I am really thrilled by all of your responses and really energized by them as well. We're going to try and put pins back on the whole crew so you can see us all, I think. Hussein, if you could give me a quick hand with that too, because we're going to move into the questions from the audience. So to remind everyone, I will ask the question of one of the people, trying to make sure everyone gets to answer one. And if candidates want to respond, we have time for one candidate to respond to each question's response. Sounds confusing. I think it's going to work. And so I'll figure out the pin situation, but I'm going to start off with a question that I think has been on the minds of a lot of young people. It's combining questions from Lyle and Cedar in the chat. So what is your vision for the, and I'll direct this one at Kim, and then someone else can respond. What is your vision for the role of hydrogen in the city economy? Is it a true low GHG solution or a distraction from achieving real GHG reduction? Also, if Edmonton is to be a hydrogen hub, will you make sure it's green hydrogen instead of blue or gray hydrogen?
A good question. Certainly, we've already announced the hydrogen hub for the region, and Edmonton's part of that. And looking at the science, I think we need to follow and rely on the science. And that is where I think hydrogen will have to find out whether it makes sense or not. I prefer real solutions rather than solutions that may not actually get us the results. And so I'm supportive of the hydrogen hub, would like to see us focus more on green rather than the alternatives of blue. But in that situation, I would be taking leadership and working with the region, and we would be obviously working with the U of A and other post-secondaries to figure out what makes sense there and whether it's something that would actually make a difference. It's certainly something to look at, because clean technology, sometimes you're going to have to take a risk in order to get a breakthrough. And so I do believe in that, but we need to be balanced on the fact that, is it real? So that would be my answer there.
Thank you. Does anyone want to respond to that question? Yeah, Breezy.
Well, I think like we have to be really, really careful of, pardon the term, but BS from the fossil fuel industry about their solutions to climate change, like carbon capture, and the blue hydrogen. Like, it's just like another excuse to keep burning too much so that their industry can keep chugging along and they can keep getting rich. Like, it just makes me feel like throwing up. We need to find ways to burn less. We don't need to try and invent tricks so that we can keep on burning too much. So I really would speak up for that always, that we have to be very wary of these so-called job creating industries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question is, the next question comes from Lori Adkin, who asks, I'd like to hear about the candidates' plans to involve citizens in decision-making about green transition priorities and targets. This is in the context of some growing concerns around public-private partnerships and how public money can be most effectively used. So I'll push that to Michael, and then someone will have a chance to respond.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's sort of a bigger question about public engagement, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as I mentioned in my early remarks, 2/3 of the $40 billion it's going to cost to facilitate the city's energy transition is going to come from the private sector. And so we're going to have to partner with the private sector, and people that think that's not going to be the case are actually misled. So we have to make sure that we have win on both sides, public sector and the citizens and the city as a whole. So we've got to make sure that relationship is strong and efficient. As far as public engagement in general, the city has had a problem in the past, in my opinion, that they're not very clear about what public engagement really means, and what can public really influence, and then what actually, to be honest, what they can't, what is already decided on, or what's happening in the city, or what's outside of the purview of this particular discussion. And so it comes into play in this issue, as it does in every other issue, that the city has to be very, very clear and very straightforward about what is directly impactful by the citizens at these public engagement hearings and that sort of thing. But then when that is put into place, the city then absolutely has to listen to people and go with what the majority of people want, which also hasn't been the case. And so we do have a challenge as a city in public engagement that we have to fix. And then we do have to partner with the private sector on some of these big, expensive challenges. And we have to make sure that there's a win for everybody there.
Thank you so much. I saw Amarjeet might have a response to that.
Yeah, quickly, I remember when I was in city council that we did create a citizens panel to tackle some controversial complex issues. And I think that kind of model should be explored again. And we're going to explore that model for seeking efficiencies into how the city is run. And I think it is time that we should also explore getting more citizens involved, having their input into what role they see the city can play in tackling climate change. So absolutely, models like citizens panel are something that city should look into, and I will definitely be exploring that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to a question that is really, really interesting to me. I think this is coming from developments in Los Angeles and New York. It's a question from Jason, who asks, would you support phasing out gas lines to new homes to accelerate the electrification and decarbonization of heating? I'll ask that to Cheryl, and then someone can respond.
That's a very interesting question. You know, I think that we have to be deliberate in our transition and our adaptation. And so I don't think that we want to end things without having fully applied the new technologies and new solutions. So I think that, you know, transitions and change management is always about making sure that you're moving at the right pace. And so complicated question, but I definitely think that as we transition and move ahead, it's being very deliberate and making sure that we aren't ending things too early.
Thanks. I see a response from Kim.
I think we need to be recognizing that we're a winter city. So I would love to be able to look at taking out pipes. The reality is, and in fact, I grew up in California, so I recognize that the weather helps in some of those transition plans. Certainly, we'd like to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. But at the moment, there is no one single technology. Nuclear would be the closest that we probably could get that would help us. But you still are going to need pipes for the near future. I have seen environmental technology that is coming through some of the NASA iTech events that I've attended and the Global Leadership Summit in The Hague, that there is new things coming, especially on the battery side, that are more sustainable. But to completely do away with our gas lines at this point would not serve what we are, which is a winter city. But obviously, I have hope that there'll be more technology soon.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Jason again. Would you support car-free zones in the city plan's new hubs as a way to short circuit a shift to low carbon transportation and safer streets? I'll pass this one to Diana.
I'm not sure that I would support a car-free zone. I'm really open to all modes of transportation. I don't want to limit anyone at all. So I support the LRT, I support bike lanes, I support obviously driving vehicles. Yeah, so no, I don't think I would be in support of car-free zones at this time. Thank you for the question though.
No problem. Michael, you had your hand up for the last one. I'm wondering if you wanted to talk to this one or if anyone else would. All right.
I'll respond if you want about the car-free zones.
Sure, go right ahead.
Well, we already have car-free zones, and we could probably use more. So you know, it's not you know, my yard's a car-free zone, and there's lots of car-free zones, and it's a good way to have more space for people to be without their fossil fuel machines. I love mine, by the way, but I'm like everyone else. But we already have, and we could use more car-free spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question is a really interesting one coming from Juan, who asks, this week, the Squamish Nation in so-called Vancouver voted to begin a nation-led and mixed-use developmental project that bypassed local zoning laws for a project based in sustainable living and active transportation. Evidently, the return of land to Indigenous peoples is a climate solution. Will you support the creation of urban reserves and dedicate resources to Indigenous self-governance in the? I'll pass this to Amarjeet to start.
City has, actually, I'm very familiar with the Silvertooth Squamish project in Vancouver. Had a chance to visit them. Phenomenal work that community is doing on sustainability. City is in conversation with Indigenous communities for creation of urban reserves. Absolutely, I support that concept, but it has to be led by Indigenous communities because, as they say, nothing for them without them, and that's the philosophy that I follow in everything that involves Indigenous communities, because they know that they have the knowledge, they have the expertise, they have the elders to guide us, and I look forward to forming a stronger partnership with Edmonton's Indigenous communities, but also Treaty 6 Indigenous leadership to ensure that we're moving forward on that, but doing that in a way that it really lives up to the character and the expectations and the history of Indigenous peoples, not building condominiums and something that doesn't really fit into what the truly Indigenous-led process is.
Thank you. I saw Michael's hand up first for a response.
Yeah, well, thank you for this. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of the urban reserves. I think that's a way that we can partner with the Indigenous community in a really interesting way. I've got a plan for the development of West Rossdale, for example, where we can use the power plant building and have another meeting place outside by the river where people can go for a walk, and like they have been meeting down there for thousands of years. And so Chief Moran from Enoch is interested, and he's endorsed the plan where we would partner with Indigenous community, with the private sector, and with government. And when I talk to the chief, or when I've talked to some other Indigenous leaders, they care about all the things that we're talking about in the reconciliation things yesterday, care very deeply about that, but they also care about economic opportunity. And that's where the city can really have a hand in to partner with Indigenous communities on the urban reserves down at Rossdale and other places like that, and make a big difference.
Thank you so much, Michael. The next question is a really interesting one from Kirsten that I think speaks to a lot of the daily lived experiences of students. Kristen asks, do you support LRT expansion as part of the solution to the climate crisis? And I'll pass it to Kim.
Well, I was on the city council when we actually started LRT. And in fact, I was played a major role in decommissioning our old trolley bus system so we'd have more money for the LRT. So I've always supported LRT. I am concerned about the recent challenges that we have going forward with the West Line, the fact that we've locked into a contract, but we don't have rail cars. So obviously we're going to need to address that. And LRT is certainly part of our overall transportation network and would continue to be so. So I've been a very strong supporter of LRT.
Thanks. I saw Amarjeet's hand up.
Yeah, look, I understand this question, and I absolutely feel it, because I used public transit so often when I was new to this country, when we couldn't afford other modes of transportation. So I am deeply committed to getting our LRT network completed. The West Line, absolutely. To Southwest, absolutely. And I would like to see our LRT get to Castleknock, a community that has been waiting for decades to have access to rapid transit. And also, we need to build our network of transit system as well, the buses, and make it accessible and affordable.
Thank you so much. The question is a really interesting one from Devin, and I think it's a little bit more about the practical aspects of being the mayor. Devin says, ultimately, the mayor is just one vote on city council. One of the issues I was faced is that there are a select number of council members who are rather difficult to work with. How will you work to city council on your side to accomplish these agendas? I'll pass it to Cheryl.
That is absolutely one of the most important roles of the mayor. And oftentimes I refer to the mayor as the chief collaborator. And there will be different kinds of partners in every relationship. And so that really takes a particular skill set and tactics. And so first of all, I think that people appreciate being brought along. And that's a very important role of the mayor, is to make sure that all of our council members have a good understanding of the issues and feel informed. And that the mayor really is spending a lot of time with councilors up and down the hallway, really helping to make sure that they feel informed and not left out. The second point that I would say as well is recently our councilors, city councilors, really only have a mandate to be responsible for the constituents in their ward. And I think that there's a big opportunity for us to assign portfolios of work to our city councilors so that they can actually see the role they have in creating a better city. And so imagine if we had a city councilor perhaps that might have a portfolio of technology and innovation or education, and how they could actually see themselves representing the bigger city, I think is going to go a long way for us creating an aligned and collaborative, cohesive council.
Thanks, Cheryl. I'll pass it to Kim for a response.
Thank you. From my past experience, the best way to empower, and the mayor can empower, is to talk to the councillors about the fact that they are only one person and that every councillor needs to step up and participate, whether that's council initiatives or whether we look at a different approach. Certainly having people with different viewpoints is actually a positive for the city of Edmonton. And so what the mayor needs to do is, as soon as they're elected, they need to build a team, find common ground on every councillor's platforms and have that team building approach. Then what they're going to need to do is immediately come out with a vision. They're going to need to empower the new city manager, because we are in for some tough decision making. And then what we're going to have to do is the mayor is going to need to be transparent and accountable. And the buck is going to stop with the mayor. And that leadership helps empower those councillors to really be able to get out there and help transform Edmonton. The other thing that we need to do is be very real with people about where we are, what our financial picture is, and what we can and can't do. And the final thing is, you need to be able to collaborate with all levels of government, no matter your ideology. So using common sense, and in fact, we're designed so party politics should not be part of the city of Edmonton. That is absolutely critical, because if party politics comes in, you can't get that team building approach where everyone from different backgrounds can come together. So it's critical to focus on common sense and not ideology. And I have a track record of working with people, collaborating, and I'm willing to think outside the box, but I'm also willing to take, the blame for tough decisions. So that would be my approach.
Thank you so much, Kim. The next question comes from Brian, who asks, how will mayoral candidates plan on working and partnering with both the provincial and federal governments to achieve climate goals, especially when municipalities have been the target for defunding in recent years? So I'll ask Michael.
Sure. So, federal governments fund cities per capita for the most part. And so, the current federal government, they're big on housing, on environmental issues, and things like that. And so they're funding per capita across the country for the most part. And our real relationship as a city is with the provincial government. The MGA, Municipal Government Act, really dictates a city's role within the province. And so we really have to fix the relationship with our provincial government right now. And whether you like the provincial government or not, as the mayor, it's totally irrelevant. You've got to take your ideological beliefs away and do what's best for the city of Edmonton. And so my approach for that would be to reach out to this provincial government or the next one, or whoever happens to be in power, and start with what are 2 or 3 or 4 things that we agree on. Give me a couple of things that we can agree on, and let's work together on those things. And then build a track record, build a bit of a some quick wins, and then you start building that relationship to try to get as much for the benefit of the city. And right now our relationship is very political and very problematic, and the city of Edmonton is losing money on the tech side, on the airport, on the U of A cuts compared to the U of C cuts. And so we really, really have to fix that relationship. And so that's something that I'm going to be focusing on day one.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Cheryl for a response.
Thanks. I think that we have a really big opportunity in leveraging our partnership with Calgary. And so when I was leading Innovate Edmonton, we formed the Alberta Innovation Corridor Partnership because we knew that our provincial partners would always have this friction between how they would fund between the two cities and make choices between the two cities. And we also recognize that it must be complex for a provincial government to have two large urban centers of their size that they have to constantly be making decisions between. And so it was really effective when we came together as our two cities. We went to meetings together with the provincial government. We weren't alone, and we advocated together, even though we might have different needs for a city. But it was very powerful because we brought this huge population with us rather than just advocating for our two smaller centers. So I propose to extend the Alberta Innovation Corridor Partnership to be an Alberta Economic Development Partnership, and figuring out how Calgary and Edmonton can work together with our provincial partners.
Thank you. I think what will be our final question comes from Maggie, who says, what is your plan to reduce city sprawl and start investing in the core to improve infrastructure in aging but existing neighborhoods? This is in the context of a city that keeps expanding into fertile and valuable farmland. I'll pass this to Breezy.
Thanks very much. Well, my plan sort of relates to the last plan. Like, I won't make nice with the UCP. I believe in being partisan, and we have a terrible provincial government. And I think that we need to speak up about getting all the voters to change that in the next provincial election. I'm not going to try to make deals with a bully. You have to stand up and speak up against bullying, and it's terrible the way the provincial government has just ravaged our economy and our city by destroying our university, and it's just, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic, but sprawl can be contained by building up.
Thanks, Breezy. I always appreciate the guitar riffs. I'll pass Michael for a response.
Well, thank you. You know, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I started an infill financing company because there really is a challenge with infill, because it's really quite difficult actually, and we need to make it easier for people. It's expensive, it's difficult, so the big developers, they really don't like it because it's easier to build out. And so if we're trying to commit to our environmental goals and our infill goals, we have to make it as easy, within the rules of course, but we have to make it as easy as possible for developers big and small to do that inside the city. And I do go back to that Blatchford example because it is, you know, the size of Blatchford it's the same size as downtown Edmonton. And there's 20 townhouses there, and they're not affordable. They start at $550,000. And so, you know, when that was closed 10 years ago, we had this great plan for it, and it's just totally fallen off the map. And so if we just get the Blatchford thing done and nothing else, it'll fulfill all of our infill goals. And then it'll over time, obviously stop the expansion of the city, which makes it more efficient from a tax base, from policing, fire, snow plowing, all these sorts of things. And so, you know, I'm a pretty big proponent for getting as much land used as possible within the city. And then the one thing will add is with the LRT expansion, part of the LRT expansion is to have these zones right at the LRT stations, these transit-oriented development zones where are going to be rezoned for much more denser infill development types. And so we actually have, as a city, since we've approved all these LRT lines, sometimes things come back to city council and then city council doesn't approve the rezoning, the upzoning of that land. And so we've got to really push and get that land upzoned so developers can build it and make it more infill, which helps all of these issues that have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you to all of the candidates joined us here today. Unfortunately, Diana did have to leave a little early, but I really want to thank her and Kim and Breezy and Cheryl and Amarjeet and Michael for all of their thoughtful responses and for taking the hard questions from the audience today. I really appreciated everyone's contributions in the audience and in the panel. So just a note to the audience that this isn't the only event that we host. We have a whole slate of really cool lectures this semester, including Jessica Vandenberg and Ginger Gibson coming up on October 13th, both of them coming from engineering backgrounds, where they'll be talking about community benefits agreements and doing engineering projects in community. We also have a really cool mini panel on October 18th with Cheryl Harper and Stephen Hoffman about the intersections of COVID and the climate crisis. And you can follow along with us on social media and on our website, which is uab.ca/sustain. You can also follow the SU Sustain, which is the sustainability side of the Students' Union for those of you that are students. And get involved with our Sustainability Scholars Program. So I'd like to thank everyone again for their time today, and take care out there. And the election day is October 18th. So